Welcome, welcome. It's Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Meagan, and this is my co-host.
Hi, Amanda.
Hello. Today's topic is an introduction to transcripts and portfolios, documenting your homeschool success. So before we jump in this week, we like to kick off our episodes with a little recap of our weeks, not because we like to show up and kind of negativity dump in some way, because sometimes we have really awesome weeks. But there seems to be this culture on social media and podcasts and things like that all we ever do is show the positive, and it's like, my life is perfect and everything's wonderful. Quite frankly, my whole week this week has been a shit show. Like, I needed one of those Instagram people who does the eye makeup while they tell stories and videos to come. Thank goodness I have a really good light for when we podcast, but the circles, the darkness, it looked like I'd been a fight. That's how tired I was, right? So we like to kick off with a little bit of a recap with the highs and the lows from our weeks. So Amanda, you were in a hotel. You want to kick us off with what's happening in the world of Amanda?
Yeah, well, so I'm in another hotel. I'm still in Missouri. I'm in southern Missouri now, and we are visiting my parents for the month. It's something that we try to do every summer because my brother and his family live close to my parents, and so my kiddo gets the cousins and grandparent bonding time and all of that. And this weekend, it just so happened my dad needed to attend a conference. IAAI for anyone who's listening and knows that kind of stuff. So we decided to tag along with him to Springfield, Missouri. And so honestly, I'm doing okay in life. I'm tired. I'm really tired. I tried really hard. I have this medical condition. It makes me really tired. But they say it's really important to try not to nap. And I'm usually good at that. But I have found that the last several days I can't stop it. I'm falling asleep in the middle of the afternoon for at least a small nap because I'm so tired. But beyond that, we're having a great time. We stopped at the world's largest gift store, and we stopped at a candy shop. And yesterday we went and toured the Fantastic Caverns and learned all kinds of interesting things and had fun with the grandparents. And today the kiddo is at the Discovery Center, which is like a hands-on science museum. And so, yeah, we're having a good time, and the hotel Wi-Fi seems to be working well. So generally speaking, I'm doing all right. The coffee was much better here. This hotel has much better coffee. So I think we'll be okay.
It's all good if the coffee's good, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I am having one of those weeks where I would like to tender my resignation as an adult. Like, I'm done. It's just been I had to hunt down some paperwork for the sale of our last house and the purchase of this house to dig up some stupid random financial number. And I had to go to a town council meeting last night for something that is going on in our neighborhood. And there's a whole group of us that have gotten together and are working on it. And so I had to go to the town council meeting, and that involved, preparing handouts and, so it's not anything like, these are all really small problems in the scheme of the big problems of the world, right? But it's just that there's a whole bunch of them all at once, and it's like, oh my gosh, like one more thing, and I'm going to snap, So I'm tired that I went to put powder under my eyes beforehand. I was like, this is not covering, right? I was like, I am just tired. But this morning I did take a little bit of time. One of my kiddos came and crawled into my bed this morning, and we watched this movie it's the most obscure freaking movie on Netflix called The Polka King. I can't imagine you've heard of this. Okay. It has Jack Black in it, and it's a true story about this guy from, I think, Scranton, Pennsylvania, who he was a polka performing artist and developed a Ponzi scheme, but it's Jack Black, so it was hilarious. We were dying. It was so good. So that was kind of like a little bit of levity for the day. I was like, I am just taking this time to kind of snuggle and before the day starts, because I'm booked now till like 8:00 tonight. So, but yeah, if you're looking for something interesting to watch, The Polka King, hilarious, absolutely hilarious. So very good. Well, I'm glad you're having fun, and I'm glad your kiddo's at the museum, because I know that's right up his alley. So he'll have had an awesome day.
Yeah, that's it. It's totally his thing. My mom was like, how much time do we need? And I was like, well, we took him to the World War I museum last weekend, and we had 2.5 hours and we only got to see half of it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and he feels even more strongly about a children's museum. So
How
she's like,
long
are
do
there
you
going to be
have?
benches? Yeah. I'm like, there'll be benches. And he's very used to the adult with him being like, you have fun. I'll be right here.
Exactly. He's going to have a great day. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, he will. All right. So check-in done. Let's go ahead and dive in. So every week we share our main topic episode, but then we also do a book club episode. If you don't usually follow along or you didn't realize, that one drops online on Tuesdays and the other one drops on Thursdays. And so far for our book club, we've read John Holt's Teach Your Own. Yeah. Jonathan Mooney's Normal Sucks. That was definitely a winner and has made me put all of his other books on my TBR shelf. And our next book that we're going to be jumping into this week, so just later this week, you'll be able to tune in and listen. It's called The Homeschooler's Guide to Portfolios and Transcripts. You can find all the details on this book and what it looks like, and make sure you're getting all the right things and all of that jazz in the details in this podcast description or wherever you're listening or watching. And on all of our social media channels as well. We have a breakdown and the cover image and all of that kind of stuff. So if you want to pick it up, and it's actually, I would say it's actually probably a pretty good one to pick up. But in any event, when I said the word transcript, I'm sure that many of you had that like stomach clench or the like, right, the cringing, like, first off, I hate them. Second off, I don't want to do them. Third, I don't really understand them and do I need to learn? That word definitely strikes fear in the heart of many a homeschooler. But since we're going to be discussing the ins and outs of transcripts and portfolios in our book club, we had thought about doing one of these episodes. We decided this would be the perfect time to do just a general podcast episode on how to actually do this thing, right? How we are each doing it, ways to actually do it. And so actually to that point, a little later on, we're going to be having a guest come on and join us. And she teaches niche interest-led classes, and we're going to work with her and do some kind of on-the-spot brainstorming about what that might look like, how you might incorporate that into a transcript or portfolio. Because it's really easy for us to sit here and talk about, well, I do this for my state and I do this for my state or for my kids' goals. But actually hearing someone talk through it and help you like get how you do it is what most of us need, right? To like kind of demystify it. So that's what we're going to do. That said, let's get into it, right? So we're going to start off with some baseline information. What is the difference between a portfolio and a transcript? So a portfolio is a collection of artifacts selected from a larger body of work. So this is it's not a transcript. It's not a report card. It's a presentation, perhaps. It might be a PowerPoint. It might be a 3-ring binder, but it has a different purpose. And we're going to go into greater detail about what all of those are in our book club episodes, because there are lots of different kinds. But
more than I even realized.
Idea. Yeah,
I was like, holy cow.
Right. Like, oh yeah, we do that one. I hope I never have to do these 8, right? There are lots of, but, so you have an idea. So the way she kind of describes it is that it's a portrait of your student in one way or another about a specific thing at a given point in time. And then a transcript is a snapshot of skills and knowledge, right? It's much more pared down. It's not a portrait with all the brush strokes and all of that. It's a picture. It's a snapshot in time, and it contains the bare minimum of information. You've got your titles, grades, dates. There aren't too many details. We'll talk about later, actually, I don't think but in the book, in the actual book club, I'll get it out here in a minute. Apparently the coffee wasn't as good as I thought it was. In our actual book club later this week, we'll talk more about when you can share book details in your transcript and what that looks like, and the benefit to being a homeschooler who's creating a transcript and how you can not do just a quantitative, but also a qualitative transcript, which can be really helpful in a lot of scenarios. So, all of those things said, why do people create portfolios, right? Personal record keeping, that's the main reason that I do it. School district or state requirements, we also have some of that. College admissions, right? You have to do that. The book that we're doing talks a lot about doing it for employment stuff. I'm not sure how much that's happening in employment these days. The book is a little dated. And then also tracking personal growth. So we're going to talk in our book club. We won't talk too much about it right now because that's not what we're talking about in this podcast. But the book club does talk about ways of using it for tracking personal growth, which was a new idea to me.
Mm-hmm. And I loved that idea. There were some really solid concepts in there. I mean, I texted Amanda when I was on page 3, and my margins were filled with notes. I mean, I was just like, this is going to take me forever to read because I'm 3 pages in and I'm just highlighting and writing and jotting stuff down. And I'm not complaining. I love that. You know, I'd rather have that than a book that I dislike. But I was like, holy cow, there's a lot of meat to this book. So yeah, I'm super excited to talk about that in the book club episode. My notes are ready to go.
Okay, before we go any further, I am just going to interject and say that if you are watching this, I know not a ton of people watch it, most people listen to it, but if you are watching this, I'm very sorry. My computer's a little shaky today. I have, I'm in a hotel, so I have different setups. And I thought for sure, being in southern Missouri, I would have no problem securing a Bible and a Book of Mormon to put under my computer to like boost it up, right? But there is not one to be found in this hotel. And we only brought one book with us, the book club book, actually. So I can't actually set the computer on the book club book because I'll need it to go through. So it's sitting on a bunch of cups. So it's not high enough that way you're not looking at my nostril, given the bizarre. So it's not super stable, and I'm trying not to touch it or bump it. But if you see it shaking around a lot, I'm sorry. Right? Like, as much as I said I've got my life together this week, there are some glitches. Okay,
I am balancing my laptop on cups. You know, like. I love that that's so typical in our lives, though, that it's not even newsworthy. It's like, because that's just what we do, right? I mean,
Hey, just FYI, this is why this is happening.
Yeah. I had to teach a class one time, and then something came up. It was with my husband. I think we were moving, and we had to go to Austin to look for houses and all this kind of stuff. And I had the final week of a cake decorating class that I needed to teach, and I literally decorated a cake in a Marriott with like store-bought frosting. Thankfully, it was the final week, so my kids were advanced enough, and they could go with the flow, and they knew. They were like, all right, we're using buttercream, but you're using Duncan Hines, and we're all going to learn how to do this technique. But I was like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting in a Marriott piping rosettes. Like, I have the weirdest life ever, so we do what we do, life is strange. I'm along for the journey. All right. So Amanda talked a bit about portfolios and why we create portfolios. And then why do people create transcripts? So transcripts are mostly, in my mind, maybe you have a different view, Amanda, because we do school so differently, right? So in my mind, a transcript is mostly for high school graduation and college purposes. It could also be to show grades to get into a program, right? So like your kiddo does some of the gifted programs and stuff like that. You might at some point need a report card or a transcript or something showing grades to do stuff like that. My daughter she's a teenager, a high school aged teenager, but in college. And so she's interning this week, actually. She's in Kansas. And she had to submit a whole bunch of stuff as far as letters of recommendation and all kinds of stuff for that. So maybe there's some sort of program that's looking for the specifics of your education. You might use it for something like that. And I'm also thinking scholarship applications might at some point ask for transcripts, or at least a GPA, which is being formulated off of a transcript. So you kind of need the end result there. And as you said earlier, Amanda, the transcript is not this big flowery artistic interpretation of your life. It is, this is the class I took, this is the grade I got. This is the class I took, this is the grade I got, right? It's pretty skeletal in that way.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I do agree. I mostly think of it as something I'm going to have to put together in high school, but I do think that we will probably need it in middle school for some of the things that he's doing. Now, for us specifically right now, again, for anyone who's just tuning in or has forgotten, because I don't expect you to keep tabs on my life, we homeschool through the charter homeschool system in California, which is, there are different types in some states, but it's pretty unique to California specifically. And so we have an oversight teacher who is part of a registered public school. And in that situation, we have to have a lesson plan, and we also have to keep all of our materials. In theory, you are supposed to bring everything that you use, all of your textbooks and everything that you've completed over the past month. You were supposed to bring that to a monthly meeting. And then on top of that, at the end of each month, you have to submit anywhere from 2 to 4 completed work samples that go into your official school portfolio, right? So for me personally, I keep any paper that we've completed or any writing assignment. I will print off, kind of the first draft, and I'll file away the graphic organizers that we used. And then the final draft, I take screenshots of online curriculum. I go into my OutSchool class and I download his attendance at, there's a place in there that you can see how many classes they've attended for this or that. And I download that and put that in our binder. And so I have a big 3-ring binder. Actually, I have a small 3-ring binder for each learning period. And then once we're past that learning period and I've had the meeting with our teacher, it goes into a bigger one for the year. And then that way I have a big 3-ring binder for each year of completed work and paper versions of any online classes he's taken or certificates of completion, like Athena's Advanced Academy and CTY. They will often provide like a written, kind of a review, a teacher's assessment, and then usually a certificate of completion for each class that they've done. So those all get printed off and put in my binder. So I have this big binder, which would be a portfolio that's kind of everything we've done. And then in theory, I have a much smaller binder that's the 4 subjects each month that we have to submit to our teacher, that goes into a much more curated version. And all of that is tied together with the fact that I keep a weekly list of everything that we have done, whether it's a field trip that had some educational stuff to it, or meal planning, or paper writing, or documentaries that were educational, or the actual curriculum and schoolwork that we do. I keep that all on a piece of paper each week. So that's in there for every week. I get a bit lazy about it in the summer, I'll be honest. But we're still learning in the summer and doing a lot of things in the summer. And so occasionally I'll jot it down or make sure that but in the summer, I tend to rely more on photos, right? Looking back and seeing where we went on field trips with my photos and things like that. It's not quite as paper heavy because, again, I have to provide those things. I have to have those things for the state, and they really only care about it from, September to June in our world. So I can lay off of some of the record keeping over the summer. How about you? I know you do a totally different, you do not have binders and different stages of 3-ring binders.
I was sitting there and I was like, listen, first of all, I get that your state needs are different than mine are. And then second of all, you like your levels of documentation and all that kind of stuff. But I was going to say, like, when it's my turn, I'm going to be like, if you're not doing what Amanda just said, as long as your state isn't requiring that, don't panic. It's okay, right? Like, I have lived, so for example, I've homeschooled in 4 states: Florida, North Carolina, Texas, and now South Carolina. My poor kids have lived in some real shit show states. I'm like, someday they're going to live in a state where it's like not completely whacked out. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So for example, in Texas, we don't even tell the state that our kids exist. It's the wackiest setup ever. I mean, every other state we've lived in, even though they're all considered low oversight states, we still had to tell someone they existed. We moved to Texas, and because my kids had never been in the public school system in Texas, they were already homeschooled when they got there. I didn't have to register them. I didn't have to open a homeschool. I didn't have to file anything, nothing. I mean, in North Carolina, I had to open my homeschool, and submit my diploma. And then there were certain records that I was supposed to keep, but they were nothing like what Amanda was just talking about. It was, um, it's been a while since I've homeschooled there, but it was like a regular school calendar. I was supposed to keep a calendar of school days. I'm like, every day is a school day. We're unschoolers. And then we had to administer a test once a year, which everybody would be all Chicken Little about, like, ah. But the thing is, first of all, there's a list of approved tests. You get to pick the test you want to give. You administer the test, and then you don't even give it to anyone. Like, no one ever sees the results. So there's really nothing to be nervous about. And one of the tests that's out there is the CAT test, which is like every child will come off the CAT test looking like a Mensa candidate. I mean, like your child is a genius level. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
That was the first test we ever did when I started homeschooling, and people were like, "Oh, this is the this is the test you should use for homeschooling to have an idea." And we did it, and I was like, "There's no way." I mean, he was like at the end of first grade, and in like sixth, like at the very top of everything. I was like, "I don't. This is not for us." And again, right, if you're just tuning in, I'm super academic aggressive homeschooler, right? So like we do things very differently, and you
want actual data.
Yeah, right. You know, like we're different. We're a different breed, and do not have to be that same breed, right? Like that's the glory of homeschooling. You get to homeschool the way that works for you. This works for us, and we're happy doing it. I am going to interject really quick. I did not say, I kind of mentioned, so in California, if you're with a charter school like this, where you're homeschooling and you have a charter school and they ask you to bring everything in, I personally have found, generally speaking, of course, it's not a rule, but generally speaking, if you bring everything in for your first meeting, you just put it in one of those big old reusable bags, and you bring in all your textbooks or every workbook, just bring it all with you, right? That first meeting. Then if you do a decent job of putting worksheets and any random thing they've colored or they've written, it doesn't have to be great, just anything that they have created over the last month into a binder and bring it with you to your next meeting, they will see that you are actually doing stuff and keeping track of it. And oftentimes they become less militant about bring everything, because you're like, oh, look, here's everything we did for our last learning period. And they don't care. They don't have the time. They don't want to look at all 27 pictures that your kid colored or doodled on, or, wrote random fart stories, or, like whatever it is. You can print off pictures of science experiments, or, like, as long as you are kind of bringing some of those things, and it doesn't have to be great, right? Because you're only submitting your best stuff for your portfolio. But if you bring really just it's that thing, like flood them with stuff. And if you bring that to your meeting, then they're like, oh, okay, they're doing things, like we don't have to worry about these people. They're actually doing stuff. And you just take it home with you. But it means that in the future, you don't have to carry the textbooks. They don't expect you to bring all of your textbooks or all of your, whatever. So that's my tip. I often see people who are like, oh, my teacher wants me to bring everything. And it's like, it's the 9th month of the school year. And it's like, okay, you could have made this a lot easier on yourself if you had just flooded them with papers early on. So there's
please don't do that again.
Yeah. Okay, we get it.
Yeah. So I totally get that. Yeah. So my experiences have been very, very different, right? I had to put together a portfolio when we lived in Florida and we homeschooled there. Now in Florida, you have to find a licensed teacher to do your homeschool evaluation, but they don't have to be connected to the public school. So if they're out of the public school, but still hold their license, that's who can do it. So that's 99% of what we all look for, is a homeschool mom who used to be a teacher who still holds their license, because they understand homeschooling and they're not going to drill you about all sorts of stuff that's super schooly that you probably won't incorporate into your homeschool. And they're just going to flip through and they're looking for progress, and they're like, they sign a letter, you send it to the county, and it's done, right? It's as easy as possible. And so I never brought all of everything, because that was never the expectation in Florida. It was just a smattering, right? And it didn't even all have to be written papers. I would bring photos of field trips. I would bring, some books that not the actual books, just like a list of some books that we did as part of a unit study or that we listened to on a road trip or something like that. And so they were all pretty scant as far as what I actually had to bring. And my kids were younger then. Maybe it gets a little bit more intense as you get older, but given that you can handpick your evaluator, it makes it really easy because you can find somebody who really aligns with your values and your style of homeschooling, and you can use the same person year after year. So to your point, like if you prove yourself and solidify yourself with this person early on, they're less likely to question you over. They're like, she knows what she's doing. Her kids are great. They're learning, they're growing, they're adventuring. It's fine. Here you go, sign paper, done. And so the scrutiny becomes a lot less. I will say, because I have an artist in the mix, there's that level of portfolio life is a little bit different. So my daughter's plan is to go to a school that will fuel her creative endeavors. She's not entirely sure what that's going to look like yet. Part of the reason for that hesitancy about where to go is that she's done some college tours already, and because she's had so much access to what she does in her high school years, she's ahead of most of where the college programs are. And so it's interesting because she's interning this week, like I said, in Kansas, and she had a meal the other day with one of the other interns who's currently at one of the schools that she had looked at. And she said, I went to the portfolio review there and I just wasn't feeling it. And she's been working with this intern. So the intern has gotten a feel of her style, her artistic abilities, things like that. She was like, yeah, you don't need to go to school there. They're not going to teach you anything. You need to find someplace else. And thankfully, this other intern had done some programs in Europe and has done a couple other things. So she's developing some really good relationships that she can kind of lean into and ask questions, which is great. But she's been keeping a portfolio for years and the original impetus for portfolio life for us was scholarships, right? So if all of my kids stayed in their typical age-bound grade levels, which we're not, they're all over the place as far as grade level is concerned. But if we were to do that, all three of my kids would be in college at the same time. And I was like, oh, that was really poor planning on my part. That's going to be really freaking expensive. Right? So I had told them all, I was like, you need a list of accomplishments, right? So she's had a binder for forever that she maintains. Any ribbons or prizes that she wins, because she enters her art all over the place. All of that is noted, her volunteer work, her guild associations, anytime she's published, all of that has been logged and recorded. And my main thought was scholarships, right? That was the big thing, was like, you're going to have to find a way to pay for these really expensive schools you'd all like to go to without coming out in oodles of debt. So we started there. But of the schools that she's looked at least the ones in the US, she has done open portfolio reviews with FIT, which is Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, and also with Parsons. And the FIT one was in person. It was a really well-run event. The Parsons one was an online event, which is great because then if you're in California, you don't have to worry about how on earth am I getting to Parsons to have somebody review my portfolio, which has been really awesome. And then the conference that she's at this week in Kansas, there's a portfolio evaluation there as well from people who are in the same art discipline that she is, who are further along in the number of years that they've been doing it. So not to say years equals skill or better or worse or whatever, right? But just they've been in that world for a really long time. They have a lot of expertise that they can pull upon or experiences that they can pull upon and share. So she brought her portfolio with her there and she updated it before she went and all that kind of stuff. So that's been a little bit of a different twist for us on portfolio. If you have an artist, that's huge. I mean, to get into FIT, which is a community college, but one of the best fashion schools in the world. So I love the fact that community college is a rock star like that because I'm very pro community college. It is portfolio and essay to get in. That's it. There's no SAT. There's no portfolio and essay. You need to show them your work and tell them why you want to be there. So, and it's a very competitive school. So those portfolios make a really big difference. So I'm super excited to be able to dive in and talk about them in book club. We broke up our chapters for this week. And last night I texted Amanda and I said, I have no faith that we're going to get through all the notes that I've written down. Forget about even Amanda's notes, right? Just the amount of notes that I wrote down for the first week. I'm like, this is going to turn into a mini series. I love this book. I love it. It's awesome. So I'm super excited to talk
So
about
I'm
it.
going to do my job to pull her back because I'm not
Yeah.
quite so excited about portfolios and transcripts. We'll see. We'll see how that works out.
It's gonna be really exciting. This is gonna be like if you talk to my kids about a new Pokemon pre-release and they go on for like a week about the same thing. It's gonna be good. Well, we have a guest who's going to be joining us, and I know Amanda's going to share some updates with us in just a moment. But if you don't mind, Amanda, I'm going to let our guest in. You can do your updates, and then we'll introduce our guest. Does that work?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome sauce. Here she comes. Welcome, Kate. We will introduce you in just a moment. Amanda has a little housekeeping to do, and then we will go ahead and talk to you about interest-led learning. I'm super excited.
Yes, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we're glad you're here. Okay, so we want to thank our premier sponsor, Hub of Curiosity. Our guest today is an educator for Hub of Curiosity, and we'll be discussing how to incorporate niche topics and interest-led learning into transcripts and portfolios. So Hub of Curiosity is an incredible resource for core academic classes like math and ELA, but also niche topics like automotive technology, filmmaking, cake decorating, and so much more. So our listeners receive $15 off any Hub of Curiosity class with the coupon code of Cure 115. So it's OFCUR 115. And you've been hearing that. If you haven't jumped on it, jump on it. We really appreciate the fact that they give us a discount code.
Yes. I love a good discount, right?
Yeah, I do. I love a good deal.
I know. I think we were talking the other day about my love of 4 easy payments on QVC, and it's like, can I spend $100? Of course I can spend $100, but 4 easy payments is just like, I can't. I feel like I'm spending less money, even though I'm spending the same amount of money in 4 easy payments. I love it. As long as there's no interest, if you give me payments, I am on that. I love it. So
Yeah.
Any form of discount, it's like a little dopamine release in my mom brain. So welcome, Kate. Our guest today is Kate Dotson, who's, as Amanda said, an educator with Hub of Curiosity. Kate seamlessly blends her creative spirit with structured learning, which is a magical thing to do. With extensive teaching experience in traditional classrooms, Kate primarily focuses on filmmaking, screenwriting, and SFX makeup at Hub of Curiosity. So quite a departure from her work in traditional classrooms around the world.
Yeah.
Drawing from her professional experience in film and theater, she brings a wealth of knowledge and contagious enthusiasm for her learners. So welcome to our podcast, Kate.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you again so much for having me.
Absolutely. And you just came from filmmaking class, which was part of the reason Kate didn't join us for the whole conversation.
Just finished our last class of the week, which is like my favorite one of the week. We get to present all of the kiddos' amazing stories that they've worked so hard on all week and then pitch us their amazing movies. So it's my favorite class of the week. It was awesome.
What kind of topics did you get today from your kiddos?
So we had a 1950s inspired noir detective film, which was amazing. And then we had a really cool sci-fi love story between alien and human in a world where they live amongst each other, but there's a lot of discrimination and prejudice within that world. So a really cool twist on a classic romance story. And I'm just always so amazed with what these young minds come in. I almost want to steal them, but I let them have their credit. I let them take that to the moon, and I tell them I'll be the first one to buy a seat to the theater when that movie comes out, because they are blowing my mind recently. So it's amazing the stuff that they'll come up with.
I love those experiences in class. That's so cool.
So fun.
I covered for somebody a little bit ago on a class where we were teaching pajama pants, and it was just one learner in the class. And, I taught this kid all week, and she was just the sweetest kid and the whole thing. And literally at the end, I said, okay, if you want to turn off your camera and try on your pants just to make sure they fit before we finalize like this step or whatever. And she turned off her camera. She comes back, she flips the camera on, and she's like, I should be a fashion designer when I grow up. Like, she was so excited. And I was like, yes, you should.
Yes.
Like, she was so excited. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I just want to I wanted to hug her. Like, she was so proud of herself. And like, those moments are so awesome.
That's why we do it. Yeah, absolutely. I always try. Every class, I always leave them with my little mantra that took me years to create for myself was, if you are courageous enough to create something, it already is worthy enough to be existing in our world, right? We need it. So that's the only thing I want to leave them with. If they take their experience and move on to another creative, which my ADHD brain does all the time. I love to hop from hobby to hobby. Whatever you do, however you're creating, if you can create it, it's already worth existing. So yeah, that's my favorite part for sure.
I love that. That's so awesome. Yeah. So Kate, before you came, we were talking about portfolios and transcripts because our current book that we're about to start in this week's book club segment is The Homeschooler's Guide to Portfolios and Transcripts. I am in love with it. Like, this might as well be like Outlander for me. I'm so excited. It's like the best book. I'm in heaven. And so we thought we would invite you on to do a little activity because one of the things that I notice when I'm talking to other homeschool parents is they're like, okay, I need math and ELA and science and this and that. And it's like, oh yeah, they're taking a filmmaking class. That's so cute. That's so fun. But like, that's not school. And I'm like, oh, right. No. That's totally school, right? That is 100% school. It can absolutely be. And not only, it doesn't even have to be an elective, because I think that's like the next level thought, right? It's like, oh, well, I'll slot that as an elective. And I'm like, but it doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah.
So how can we fit these things in? So we thought we would ask you to describe a couple of your classes for us. And Amanda and I, on the fly, neither one of our kids have taken these classes, although after the description you just gave now, I'm like, oh, my kid would totally, you'd be getting a Penguin documentary every week. But, you know.
Listen, I love it all.
Yeah. You'd be like, and more about penguins.
Right.
So our kids have not taken your classes, so we're not familiar. This is a spur of the moment activity, so don't judge us. But we thought we'd have some fun. So do you want to give us one of your classes, Kate, and tell us a little bit about it? And then between us, we'll figure out how we would document it.
Yeah, sure. I love this topic too, because I'm a big believer in, I think Elon Musk kind of made the comparison that, you know, our school systems often are like, hey, if you want to learn how to build a car, we're going to read a textbook on everything that it goes in a car. And then we're going to learn about the tools. And then, rather than, hey, here's a car, here's a bunch of tools that you'll need. See what works. And then as you're doing that process, you're getting that real live experience that teaches you what you're trying to learn, right? And I think that's such a way better way to retain information. And we're seeing that from kids all the time now, right? So I'm a big believer that all of the classes I teach, I try to incorporate real education inside of that, right? So for example, we're doing a camp right now, which is a shortened version of the 16-week course, right? The screenwriting course, where we ask the kids to, with their own creativity, we give them a little bit of a box inside of a genre. So we do a roulette wheel to pick 2 random genres, and they get to combine those and create a story within that world, just to kind of help get those creative juices flowing and not have that blank page syndrome, right? It's the worst to have that blockage. And yes, we are doing something creative, but we are learning so much about writing, so much about voice, and some of the elements that go into the classic literature classes that we all took in high school, right? But we're learning them in a practical way that helps us become storytellers rather than just story consumers, which is kind of the basis of those lit classes, right? And so we are the narrative creators. We are the creators in that class. And so we're learning based on that model of, I don't want to give you a textbook on how to be a filmmaker. I want to show you through your process of creation, right? And when we hit a wall, work through whatever that element may be that we need, maybe a little bit more of the education side of the class. So it comes a lot into creative writing, a lot of developing your own voice, a lot of understanding genre and tones that go into those genres. So across the board, there's so much learning to be done. So I don't run it like an elective. This is a class that I think you can absolutely take into life as a creator and be able to just tell those stories and help manipulate and bring your audiences along in a way that makes sense. We're not dragging anyone along, right? We've all seen a movie where we're like, come on, let's get it going. I have no idea what's going on, right? So to help connect us to our audiences and become that bridge as a storyteller.
I love that. I watched one of those movies the other day. I'm like still a little bit pissed off that I wasted too. I kept thinking there was going to be some like big. It wasn't. It was a Denzel Washington movie too. It was Jared Leto, Denzel Washington, and I was like, what was that? I had to Google stuff afterwards to even figure out what happened. I was so annoyed about it
all the time, and it's so hard to get that stuff that's in our brains rummaging around and then get it to a 3D world scenario. For me, that's on page. It's so hard to do, and to make it make sense, and to make it fun where someone else is there, right? So we go through all of those elements, which is super, super fun.
Yeah, if you want to feel pretty annoyed about a movie, you should watch The Little Things. Like maybe you'll like it. I don't know. At the end of it, I felt annoyed. So Amanda, given that description, now Amanda and I, Kate, just so you know, we homeschool completely differently, which is part of the fun of our podcast. Amanda's a super academic homeschooler and views things differently, and I'm a super loosey-goosey, let's have some fun and whatever. Not that you don't have fun, Amanda. I didn't mean to imply. I know you have lots of fun. I know you have plenty of fun, but like we just approach things a little bit differently. So what do you think? How would you take that and turn it into something?
Okay, yeah.
Written,
so
documented.
in our world, we're doing more portfolios, right? So you can talk to how you would do with probably a transcript, because you would be more in the transcript world at this point in life. But for a portfolio, I think, I would document that down under a lot of ELA. So I would count that as, I would document that we're doing literary criticism, and I had another word in mind, but it's escaping me now. You get the idea. So we would have that. I would have that as part of the writing process, and that we are working on, they call it the 9-step writing process. That's in official writing, where you do your pre-thinking and your pre-writing, and then your first draft and your second draft. And I would include that with that, because you're absolutely doing that as you work from your first idea to your finished product. I may actually include it in some kind of performance music type thing, only because you're working with your voice. And even if you're not singing, any sort of vocal performance, I think that counts. And that's, a pretty important part of music in school in all ways. And so I think using your voice and understanding how to use it falls in that. Yeah. And then I would be really tempted, we haven't actually talked about this, but I would be really tempted to encourage my kiddo to create a free blog where they could post their work on the blog and be able to direct people to the finished product for each thing that they were doing, if they were doing a lot of those kinds of things and enjoying it and creating on the regular, and have that be part of our portfolio.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
I was thinking too, and I don't know, Kate, only that I know that they exist. I think there's like software programs for screenwriting, because screenplays are formatted, I'm going to say really wonky, because it's not my genre. To you, I'm sure They look, your eyes just track the whole thing because you're used to reading them. But to me, you've seen them, right? Where it's like there's tons of white space on those pages. Are some of your kiddos using screenwriting software to do stuff like that, or do they have the option to?
So what we do have the option. So I did create a full syllabus for this list, just because, again, I'm ADHD. I need something pretty to look at, or I'm not going to look at it, right? So I created a ton of visuals, because most of our class is outside work. And so I want them to have something to reference, so that they don't have to really rack their brains to remember that quick 50 minutes that we have together to learn all of this information. And so in that syllabus, I did give them some resources for either free trials or free programs, both for editing and screenwriting, that they can use. And there are, tons of software out there, tons of free trials, and there are even some that are completely free, which is really amazing. So they're not hard to find, but I also did create a reference sheet that, if you're kind of like me, I love longhand until I'm in probably my third draft of screenwriting, because if it doesn't look pretty, again, I don't want to look at it. I want to know that it's a vomit draft that I'm writing out, right? So I did give them a reference sheet. So if they're kind of like that, they can just know what are the elements of screenwriting that we need to have to format our script. Where do they kind of go? And then they can plug and play their own creativity. So I did give them both options, just for all brains to kind of be set up to succeed in that way. But absolutely, there are tons of free resources for filmmakers, including free softwares that are in the syllabus.
Oh, yeah.
I love
Well,
that because I was thinking, Amanda, for you, for like in technology as well, as far as like a technical component of learning a new program or a new software or something.
yeah, that's it. For the younger kiddos, you have to have keyboarding.
Mm,
That's a requirement. So you could easily call that keyboarding, even ignoring the software aspect of it. If they're typing it up and putting it in, you could call that your keyboarding. And then you could also do some kind of a tech, depending on what your state allows or requires for core classes versus electives. Yeah.
I love that. So, from a transcript perspective, most of what happens with transcripts relates back to hours. And so, because there's credit hours, ironically, they're called Carnegie units because Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller basically established our public school system. And so, Carnegie units have a certain number of hours per credit. So, you can do a full credit or a half credit based upon how many hours you've put into something. So, I would rather not do the one that you just said, Kate, and instead you mentioned something about a 16-week class. Can you
mm.
tell us about that one? And I could talk about transcripts for that one,
Yeah,
perhaps?
absolutely. Because we definitely get way more in depth in the 16-week program, right? So for that 5-day camp, I kind of modified it to be able to dip our toes into the experience of that pre-production, that creating a film, and then what it's like to get that pitched and potentially made with the help of executives from major streaming sites or producers. That's kind of how that works. Our 16-week program is really more about the creative side from beginning to end on character voices, how to distinguish those, the language we use, the tones we create, the pacing that we create as storytellers. So it is all of that writing element. I also have my kids do budgets for their films based on like, what actors do you want to put in your films? If you want Steve Carell, that's going to be a way higher budget than if you want to do an open casting call, right? So just talking about the different avenues that we can take as filmmakers. But that 16-week course really, really delves into how we are taking the hand of our audience and bringing them along, and most importantly to get across the themes that are important to us, right? So every great story that we tell, you can find stories in all of the mundane parts of the world. It's really about the lessons and themes we want to get across and leave our audience with, because there's so much power in visual storytelling and filmmakers as a whole, because our reach goes so much wider than so many other mediums, right? And so that's what I'm really trying to get across to the kiddos, that it is your themes, it is the core values of the stories you want to tell that we want to ingrain and integrate into every piece of our screenwriting and script writing process, right? So just going through each and every one of those elements of what creates good characters, what creates good dialogue, what creates good films, all of the things that go into that. And then how can we, through our specific voice and themes that we want to get across, integrate those and manipulate those to bring our audience along. So way more in-depth process, way more layered and complex, and hopefully to give the kiddos a well-rounded full script that they can take into the world and run with.
I love the fact that you've got budgeting in there, because that's kind of one of those things whenever we talk about interest-led learning or unit studies or something, it's like, but what about math? We can do all of that, but we still have to teach math, right? And it's like maybe not, right? So it depends on your homeschooling approach. I have not formally taught math to my kids. They're A-okay, they're better than A-okay, they're totally fine. But if you can't sleep at night that way, either first of all, let's talk. You can come talk to me one-on-one, or teach math then, right? Like whatever works for you. But I love that you've got math in there, because you can get some really solid math through life experience, which I love.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was thinking while you were talking is the research that authors do. So I'm a big reader and I love the author's notes. And it's funny, I lead a book club, and I have this one student, she's been with me for about 3 years, and one day she was like, I brought up something from the author's notes, and she was like, my beige flag is that I never read the author's notes. And I was like, you're missing out. And by the end of the last semester, I brought something up from the author's notes, and I gave her a hard time, and she's like, I read them. I'm like, I've won, right? But I love it when the authors talk about their research phase in that process. And I feel like for screenwriting, it would be the same thing. If you're writing a book that takes place, in space or something, like you have to have an understanding of what's realistic and what's not. Because
Absolutely.
if you have, I mean, granted, sometimes it's meant to be fanciful or not realistic, but if you're watching a film with my 12-year-old autistic child, who's going to be like, that could never happen because
That's
gravity doesn't work like that, right? So
absolutely.
there's researching in there, there's history, there's science, whatever the theme of your thing might be. If it's a psychological thriller, you're researching psychology, but there's so much there. So you mentioned it's 16 weeks. How many times a week do they meet?
So twice a week. Yeah. So it's going to be twice a week for 16 weeks. Just to keep that consistency, right? And keep it at the forefront of your brain and keep in that world. And there is so much research, historical research, right? I just had a kiddo that was doing, I loved it because it's so not me. I don't do history pieces very often, but I was so able to connect with hers, and she was doing a story, back in, I think it was like during the Revolutionary War, right? And so we
Wow.
were really talking a lot about how people who have no idea about the Revolutionary War will pick up from a
Yeah.
mile away the language, the dictation, the costumes, right? Even if we don't have a solid hold on the facts of those history, when they're put in front of our face and they're incorrect, they're blaringly obvious. So not even just for period pieces, but even the human qualities of films, right? That we know from our day-to-day interactions, and us neurodivergents are going to be the first ones to pick that out and be like, I'd never react that way. And I know I don't always react exactly how I'm supposed to, but like, that's unrealistic. Or
Yep.
you get the kids that come in and they know when an adult has written for a child's voice. Ugh. And they hate it. And we talk about that all the time because they don't take the time to research and really be in that space of a young mind and how they talk, and the vocab that's up right now, right? And so even that, I think it's so funny, my beige flag, that's just something so of the youth right now, and you have to know those things to sell what you're selling in your script. And so every script, no matter if it's a historical piece, something in space, you have to do that research to be able to manipulate your audience a little bit in the best way, right? Because we're doing that for their experience, to bring them into our world. We never want to break that fourth wall with them so that they understand, oh yeah, we're just watching a movie. We always want them to believe in the world we're creating.
Right.
And take so much research and thoughtfulness inside of your details. So absolutely.
We had that. I went to see a movie, it must be almost 20 years ago, that movie Cold Mountain. It's based on a book. And I went to see it, and on the way home, I was like, why do my shoulders hurt? And then I realized it's because the whole movie I was doing this, and they just kept getting higher. And I was holding so much tension in my body waiting to see how this movie ended, right? That it was like I was in the movie. It was amazing. So I'm thinking from a logistics perspective. First of all, I love how many core academic subjects are in there, how many life skills are in there, et cetera, et cetera. So if you've got 16 weeks and they're meeting twice a week, I can do 16 times 2 in my head, but the math is going to get more complicated. So we're up to 32 hours in that course right there. Okay, a high school credit is 120 hours, typically speaking. So 120 for a full credit, 60 for a half credit. We're at 32 just in class time. How much time do you think your kiddos are spending each week, Kate, outside of class, if they're really rocking it?
If they're rocking it, per week. So I try and make it manageable, especially in a writing scenario. I think getting words on a page is and especially when it's all from your own brain, every one of those little details. I try not to exhaust or burn out, because then my spigot doesn't want to turn back on, right? I want to keep that free flowing. So I would say anywhere between an hour to 2 hours a week, right?
Okay.
Depending on the exercise. So maybe 2.5 hours a week if they're really in it and sitting down often to either outline or character design, or dialogue, right? Any of those things.
Okay, so if I do you said between an hour and a half and 2.5. So I went 2 just for an average, right? And that gives us another 32 hours. So 32 hours in class, 32 hours outside of class. You are at a half credit, right? That is a half credit. How you decide you want to slot that, it can be slotted as an elective. If you've got all your core stuff covered and you're doing an elective, go for it. Half credit elective in filmmaking. And then I think, Kate, you also teach a similar class for screenwriting. Am I correct? There's a filmmaking one and a screenwriting one. Right?
Yes. So I was talking about the screenwriting. So that's the screenwriting. And then we also have, the
filmmaking. So if you were to pair, so if you were to pair those two together, like spring semester, fall semester, now you're at a full credit for a year of classes, right?
Yeah, and you're going to spend more time outside of class for the filmmaking class than you are your screenwriting class.
So that one might even be a standalone credit all on its own. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yep. And then you can decide, like for the screenwriting class, you can kind of look at the way your student approaches it and the way they kind of divvy up their work and whatnot. You might just want to use that as an ELA credit, right? If you find that the vast majority of those hours are spent writing and researching for writing and revising and editing and all of that, instead of an elective, if you feel that it qualifies as an ELA credit, go for it. You can totally use it as that. Then, sorry, go ahead.
Well, but I want to point out that depending on what your kiddo chooses to write about, you might find that this is a social studies credit. You might find it's a science or a history credit. It might not be because, they might be doing a love story in a dystopian novel that, doesn't easily fit into any of those things. But depending on your kid's interest, this might very well be an easy way to say, hey, here, maybe they have to research a ton about world religions. And so then it is, clearly a social studies half credit right there on that, right? There's a lot of different ways that, ELA is an easy one because it's screenwriting. But really think about what your kid is researching and what they're writing about, because that is fundamentally how you want them to learn all of these other topics, right?
It's so funny because I was literally just going to say, I was like, but if this turns into a rabbit hole situation, and the reason I think you went there, Amanda, is because even though we homeschool very differently, we very much have similar kids in their thirst for information. That, if my kid gets hooked on something, that's it. She has, not even, like next week when she gets back from Kansas, she has a Zoom call with this natural dyer who lives in Israel, and they're going to talk about the ancient techniques of creating purple from snails on the Mediterranean coast, because that's this woman's specialty. And my kiddo's about to do a project with it, and this woman was like, yeah, no problem, I'd be happy to chat with you, right? The number of hours that this kid has spent on the bronchial glands of snails is that is like she'd have a PhD in it by now at this point, right? And so it's like, if that's what she's creating a documentary about the origins of purple in history, yeah, it's going to go into world religions, it's going to go into geography, it's going to go into all these different things, history and all this other stuff. So it may just be the start of a rabbit hole where you end up with a half credit for ELA and then a half credit for something else, because forget about the 64 hours that we just calculated, they're at like 400 hours. When your kid is interested in a topic, right, Amanda, like, could your kid hit 100, 200, 300 hours easily on topics?
Oh, yeah, because he's read like every book they have at the library on it and watched some documentaries in his free time.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Right? So there's no reason why, filmmaking or screenwriting or whatever the case might be couldn't pivot into some of those things as well. And it's just about sitting back and watching, and observing the avenue that they're taking and how they're doing it. And we don't have to control it. Kate's there for steering. It's good. It's all good.
Yeah.
So we have a coupon code specific for Kate's classes, don't we, Amanda?
We do. So Hub of Curiosity has the general one, but they have given us the opportunity to offer a little bit more off. So they are offering a $20 coupon for anyone who would like to try one of Kate's classes, since she was on here with us today. We'll link her class options in the comments section and below wherever you're watching. If you would like to take one of Kate's classes, you can apply the code of Cure Film 20. So it's OFCURFILM 20, and that gets you $20 off at the time of registration. So
that's
great. Yay. We love that.
Yeah, and I believe you can use either. So if you're using the other one for something else, use it for something else, and then this one's a little bit more, so use it for Kate's, right? It's like 4 easy payments. I love it.
So it's not one or the other. That's great. So you could do one automotive science or cake decorating, and get $15 off of that, and then still get the $20 off Kate's. That's great. I love that.
I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
All right. Well, thanks again, Kate, for joining us. I very much appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm such a big fan of the podcast. I love it. So I'm going to get into homeschooling. My little one is still really young, but we're really, really excited for the homeschool journey. So we've been doing like a ton of research, and I love this podcast for it just because it felt so formal, and now it feels a little bit more doable, which I love. So I will be an avid listener, and I really appreciate you guys for having me on, and I hope we get tons of people coming in for the classes. It's been such an amazing experience with Hub of Curiosity. So I want to reach as many people as possible. It's not just a film course. It's for people who have a voice. And even if you want to have a creative medium somewhere else, this is a class for people who want to be encouraged to use that voice and tell their story. And so it really is a collaborative class for anyone and everyone to come join and get creative. So
I love it. Thank you, Kate, for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You guys as well. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. So that was awesome. I'm really glad Kate could join us. So we are talking about transcripts and portfolios. So speaking of transcripts and portfolios, did you remember or did you know that you can book one-on-one coaching time with Meagan and myself? Meagan is your best resource for transcripts. I'm going to put it out there. Transcripts are not my thing. I'm not there yet. Don't book me for transcripts. If you want help, if you're in California and you want help with your portfolio and how to make it so your teacher's off your back, I'm happy to talk with you about that. I'm happy to help walk you through that. But you can book us for one-on-one scheduling. The link is in all of our social media places and all of that jazz. We are happy to support just about anything, right? We can help you choose curriculum. We can help talk through what deschooling might look like in your home and how you might want to part-time world school or any number of things. We're happy to talk about all of those things. And again, the link is in all the places. It shouldn't be too hard to find. And it's also on our link tree. That's an easy place to go on Instagram on Linktree if you're not familiar with any of the other spots. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, before we wind down with our podcast, I would like to go ahead and invite you to join our Facebook group. We kind of mentioned it last week. We finally decided we've been noodling it. We decided to start Homeschool Moms Unfiltered on Facebook. So we're building a community. It's focused on kindness, support, and fun. We would love for you to come and join us.
Wonderful. Yes, come join us. We have some fun. We have a hot debate going on right now about a shopping list that I sent to my teenage son the other day, and what I thought I asked for versus what I got, and what your interpretation is just from looking at the shopping list. What do you think I asked for? And so there's been some interesting interpretation of the shopping list. So I'd be keen for feedback. Okay, so our spotlight section today is student spotlight, which I love. One of the things that we would love to get more of are more inputs from our audience as far as student spotlight. Am I the asshole? Recommended resources, messy moments, things like that. We are working on a website, which will be up and running soon, and there'll be an area to send in submissions there. But for now, feel free to DM them to us or put them in the Facebook group or just find us, comment on Spotify, whatever. That's a new feature on Spotify, but we would love that. So today we will be spotlighting an incredible student, and we would love to spotlight yours in the future, but here we go.
Student Spotlight. We don't judge bragging here. We celebrate with you.
What do we have, Amanda?
All right. So this week we're actually going to celebrate my kiddo. I think is amazing, and he does a lot of awesome things. But a few years ago, he did the SCAT testing to gain entrance or admission into the Johns Hopkins University Center for Talented Youth program. And he's really enjoyed that. He's taken some classes there. He has done some in-person classes and camps and virtual things. But at the time, it's a pretty arbitrary, weird test. And I'm going to put that out there. Even for me in my academic mind, it's pretty arbitrary and weird. It was like created in the 70s and it's really outdated. And they have to score at least, they have to like more than 2 grade levels ahead of where they are and all of that kind of stuff. In any event, in second grade, when he took it, he had no problem qualifying at the verbal level. So they do verbal qualification and then math qualification. And you can have either one to gain entrance into CTY. You don't have to be strong in both, but it does limit what classes you can actually sign up for. And so he qualified on verbal, but not on math, which was a little surprising to me because I knew that he loved math and he was strong in math, but he just wasn't qualifying there. And then shortly after he took that test, we actually started the process of assessment and found out that he does, in fact, have a learning disability that makes it difficult for him to quickly recall basic memorization facts. So in second grade, when you had to be able to quickly recall your multiplication tables and your division tables and all of those kinds of things at a very, fast clip, he really struggled. And I didn't know that, right? I didn't realize what was going on. So in any event, we know this now. We have addressed it. We're doing what we need to do. And with his most recent end of year assessments, we were able to take those scores and send them to CTY. They reviewed them, and he has now qualified at CTY for both verbal and math. He's now qualified in both. So he's going to be really happy. Generally speaking, it doesn't matter, and I don't care all that much, but he always wants to do the summer programs that are focused, that have a math component, because he really likes the sciencey ones and those kinds of things, and he couldn't do that. So I'm just really excited and happy for him that now that we've got that sorted out and we've used the resources that we have at our disposal to address those kinds of things, he is able to actually attend the classes that he really wants. So that's my
I'm so happy for him.
Yeah, that's my mom brag. I'm excited.
Yay, I love it. Yeah, I love it. I feel like we've been made to feel like it's a bad thing to be proud of our kids and to share something. And I'm like, yeah, there's an obnoxious way to do it. But then we kind of went hard tilt in the other direction where it was like never okay to share something great that your kids did. And I'm like, that sucks. Like, there's all this stuff online about like women being catty and all that. And I'm like, I don't have that circle of women in my life, right? Like, I have an amazingly supportive group of women in my life. And like, if you have that, then you should be able to say, like, my kid did this and it's so awesome. And your circle should be like, that's so exciting. I'm so happy for them, right? So that's the environment here. Come, we'll be so happy when your kids do stuff. Send it. Don't feel bad. We're breaking the cycle of feeling bad about saying, I'm proud of my kid. It's cool here. I like it.
Yeah, no, that's it exactly. And even like this, it's not something that he specifically did, right? It was, he had to take this standardized testing because of the school that's our umbrella school and what we're under. And I just kind of happened to think, hey, I think I can actually send these to them and have them reevaluate his status, right? And I just got the email back last night, so it was kind of at the forefront. And I was mom bragging because we mom brag in our Facebook group, and so I was mom bragging there, and I was like, oh, if we don't have a student spotlight from someone else, I can share. I'll mom brag on the podcast today. So
I like it. I'm happy for him. That's so awesome. Well, Amanda, I feel like you've had a lot of sections today, and I'm not saying that in a jealous sort of way. I'm just saying it in like, wow, when I made notes, I really gave Amanda a lot to say today, and she's probably tired because she's been napping. So would you like me to wrap us up with our mantra today and give you a little break?
Take it away with our mantra.
Our mantra for the week is, as the fearless leader of this homeschool escapade, I wield humor like a sword and patience like a shield. So please, if you're having a rough moment during the week, break out some humor and some patience and come hang out with us.
Yes.
So thanks for joining us today. We hope you have an awesome rest of your day and happy homeschooling.
Yeah, have a great one.